Dr. Z is a great example of exactly what the Honors College offers. She puts an amazing amount of effort into her pedagogy and how she's actually teaching her students. I have described it before as a sort of scavenger hunt of learning, where she puts all these breadcrumbs out for you and you kind of go along the path thinking that you discovered it yourself, but she actually was the one laying it out for you. She's an amazing professor, super caring, and it's really important she get recognized for this, because I don't really see administration and higher up people in the classroom that often, and you know, they can't be. So I wanted to make sure that they knew what was going on in the classroom.
For me, teaching is first and foremost about community building, and education follows from that lead, right? If you make a connection with people, if you make them care about you and about other people and about themselves, they care about learning, right? Because learning facilitates all of those things, and it facilitates like self-discovery and self-authorship, right? The more community building you do, the more real you are with people, the more of a connection you try to make, the easier it is for everyone to teach and learn transformatively, right? I really believe in that. And I feel absolutely privileged to teach in honors in a place where people are there to do the good thing. They are not just there to get the best grade and to put that on their CV.
It takes people and things to make both self and society. And it takes people to make stuff. And we mutually shape each other, right? And it's just like, clothes are a cool way to do this. But I also thought it would be really fun for you guys to like think about like, what are the limitations of methodology?
I love to bring my authentic self to class. Sometimes I think the dean would wish it was a little less authentic, but in order to make a connection with people, you have to keep it real. For me, I like to be funny. I was liked in the Anne of Green Gables movie where she said, if you're gonna present publicly, you make them laugh or you make them cry. And I always as a kid thought, why not do both, right? Present things with so much gravitas that people are moved emotionally, but also like, make them laugh, make them want to participate, make them want to have fun, make them feel weird and uncomfortable and delighted and joyful. To steal a phrase from the great oral historian Alessandro Partelli, who's done some great work in Italy and Kentucky, he calls oral history a mutual sighting, and that is how I feel about teaching too, that it cannot work without a mutual sighting. Otherwise, it is always an exercise in inequitable power instead of a mutual collaboration, like fostering mutual humanity.
Well, Dr. Brower's really student-oriented. He's as kind and personable as he is knowledgeable. Dr. Brower always treats each student as individuals having their own personalities. He takes the time to get to know you. He is very generous with his time. All around, he's just a good man, Charlie Brown.
I think that I'm really committed to helping students understand what makes their interests tick. There's a kind of self-reflection that is involved in the way that I teach the humanities. In order to, I tend to teach a kind of train of logic or a train of steps that go into any kind of interpretation or any kind of critical approach. So what moves you, right? What is interesting to you about this particular moment in this text, this scene in this film? What is grabbing you about it? Okay. Figure out what grabs you and then interrogate it, right? What about it? Is it the way that it's shot? Is it the way that the world is constructed? Is it the way that that moment is comprising a sequence or constituting a sequence? The idea being that you move from what seems to be interesting you to an interrogation of that interest and then to an interpretation. And so I insist constantly to my students that you don't learn vocabulary for merely academic purposes, right? So that you could pass a test. You learn this so that you can make finer observations, resulting in better interpretations, resulting in more interesting arguments. So I'm trying to teach students, how to be more interested and interesting viewers. The idea of an asymptote is it is the marking of an absolute limit. What Zada is saying here is that film, and even more precisely, the neo-realist conception of film, has as its goal coming as close as possible to the asymptote of reality, to reality as such. I treat every semester as a blank slate. I look at the size of the class, I look at the classroom, I look at the material that I'm teaching, I try to figure out the best way to get the material across. Obviously, I'm incredibly gratified by the award, but I want to resist as much as possible the idea that, oh yeah, okay, great teacher, right? I'm gonna I guess it's done and dusted, right? I want to keep working, right? I want to keep getting better as a teacher because my students are changing. It's a different group of students every semester, and so I have to adjust as well. So this is nice. It feels great, but it's not the end of the job, right? It's a point at the beginning.
So what compelled me to nominate Dr. Elliott would definitely just be how much he cared for each of his students individually, how involved he was in all the right ways. I think there was just an incredibly positive forward thinking whenever he interacted with the students, whenever he interacted with me personally. There was just such a strong desire to ensure that I learned everything and was getting all of the content, getting all the concepts, and just succeeding in his class in every way. And that was not extent to just me. That was to every student that he interacted with.
Well, especially my students in 100 level classes, a lot of them don't want to be in math classes. They don't like math. They've had bad math experiences. And I'm honest with them on the first day, and I say, I'm not going to try to convince you that you will need to know this formula to do some future job. But I instead tell them that at some point in your life, you're going to need to solve a math problem that you haven't seen before, and you're going to have to be able to figure it out. So we're going to practice figuring out new types of math problems. And I think that kind of mindset will stick with them. The content they'll forget, and that's okay. But the mindset of being able to solve math problems is the thing I want them to take away. And I think they find that motivating. Say, okay, he's right. At some point I'll want to buy a mortgage or start a business. I'm going to need to know how numbers or money work, especially in an era where any fact you want to know, you can find online. We have online calculators that are really precise. So I don't need to necessarily teach them all these facts to memorize or formulas, but I want to teach them how to learn things, how to teach themselves, and how to problem solve.
We want to know how to set up a differential equation for P prime, the rate of change in pollution in the reservoir. Not the total amount, not the equation for P, but just for P prime. So first we need to know how many kilograms of chemical P flow into the reservoir each day.
My philosophy is to train my students to be problem solvers. Like I mentioned, especially my calculus students, most of them are training to be engineers. We have such better calculators on our phones than they will ever be. We don't need to train them to be little human computers anymore. We need to train them to be critical thinkers. We need to train them to have resilience and to approach a scenario they're not familiar with and figure out how can I turn this into a problem that I do know how to solve, and then I'll let the computer do the number part. So I'm lucky at UK to have lots of good colleagues, and we're all trying to help raise students up to the level they ought to be at. But a lot of them come in with this anxiety about math or these feelings of I'm not a math person, and we want to say, well, you've struggled with it, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. We can help you get there.
I nominate Dr. Weber because of his dedication to his students, to the university, and to his field. Effective teachers are always available to their students and want to see their students succeed in reaching their career and educational goals. These teachers inspire their students to view the world in a different lens and inspire their students to be active participants and build their community and their academic field of choice. To put it simply, he's someone who cares, and that is what makes him a great teacher.
The philosopher who's of greatest inspiration to me is John Dewey. And he was an incredibly influential philosopher of education as well as of democracy. And my outlook on teaching is very much driven by the insights he shared with everybody, including me, which include the idea that interest is perhaps the most important self-motivating spring of energy in education. And some people bemoan the idea of like trying to make something popular in order to teach something, but it's not so much that things be popular, but rather that they somehow are matters presented in such a way that people can appreciate how and why someone would care about them. You do that, and then all of a sudden people can feel the growth of their strengths and their powers in learning anything, in learning whatever it is you're talking about. And I think that's the key, is trying to understand and identify the interests of the students in such a way that you can help steer them towards, projects of great meaning that they might engage in with you in your class. And they will have read so much more than they usually read. They'll also think it's easy. That's the funny thing. People will think it's easy, but actually you're doing something harder in so many ways. And yet their work is better as a result. Of supreme importance for Plato was the virtue of friendship. Lo and behold, you read Aristotle's Ethics, and you'll see at the end, that's his key guiding virtue for a society, for the social animal, is to be friendly, is to have reciprocal goodwill. Teaching is this terrific opportunity to share curiosities with other people who all see things in different ways. And so I've been blessed with an enormous number of really fascinating ideas and ways of thinking that I never came up with. And so I learn a ton from the process. And I think it's sort of a mutual virtuous circle. Like these things reinforce each other. And so I get up every day and work in an industry in which the goal is to help empower people to pursue meaningful lives and to have a better society. For me, I can't think of a more joyous activity.
So I nominated Dr. Fillmore for the Great Teacher Award because about a year ago I started working in his lab as an undergraduate research assistant. At that time I had no idea how much of a positive impact working with him, working in his lab was going to have on my future. So I ended up deciding I wanted to go to graduate school, and upon deciding that, he kind of took on the position as my mentor, even though he didn't need to do that. I ended up taking a class with him last semester, and it was probably one of the best classes I've ever taken. The subject material was interesting, but just the way he taught it was very engaging and very interesting for the whole class. So not only do I think Dr. Fillmore is a great professor, he's also a great mentor and a great person and very deserving of this award.
Most of my work is funded by the National Institutes of Health. Many people just work in med centers doing this research, not training postdoctoral students, certainly not training graduate students. In some ways, I was trained as a graduate student in this. I enjoyed the process, and I have always just felt that is the model I want. I want it to be a team effort where I'm not just conducting a study and learning and interpreting results and publishing a document. I'm taking another individual up that ladder with me, and so that we can learn things as a team. In the last several years, I can't imagine doing this on my own. I think it would definitely take the thrill and the excitement out of it. I see it as a waste to do science without engaging undergraduates and graduate students in some capacity so that they can see and learn from this very important process in society. Go. The students are working in the laboratory testing subjects, usually on their own, but they come out every couple of days and we become unified as a group, checking and learning about what we are discovering in terms of the science that we're gathering and how to interpret those results and findings. And again, that's a group effort among all of the students. I'm just a sounding board sometimes as they try to interpret some of the interesting findings that we get in a particular study. It's just as important to learn when you come through a 4-year degree about what it is we don't know as a society as what it is that you've picked up in the last 4 years. And I can remember way back to when I was an undergraduate student. From my first year to my 4th year, I came out going, we really have a lot to learn about a lot of things in society. And that might have been the most valuable thing that I got out of my 4 years. And I want my students to know that too.
For me, it was an easy decision because Dr. Johnson has been such a dominating force as far as support while I've been in this program. She really shows up like as a light, you know. A PhD is not an easy lift, and she is like that coach. It's just like, you got it, keep going, you can do this. And so that has meant the world to me, and I know, like I said, it's meant the world to others, and I think we need more people like her.
I frankly would not be here had it not been for my own teachers and then my faculty advisors going through university. I constantly think about that and how, you know, the doors of higher education and academia can be really heavy. And we often shut those gates in people's faces. And I'm constantly reminded that those gates would have been shut in my face had it not been for my own professors believing in me, seeing my potential, wanting to invest in me and pour into the goals that I had for myself and recognizing the needs that I had because I was a first-gen student. And so I'm always thinking about that with my own students, whether they're first generation or not, but always thinking, you know, what is the potential here? You know, what is it that this student wants out of their education, and how can I help open those doors so that they can realize that path?
We have to think about, if this is the truth, little t truth, our research is putting out there, what's the impact of that going to be? And so I think that approaching it in this way, you have to question. You have to question some of those assumptions about what is right and what's going to happen when we put that research into play.
I'm teaching about the university within the university. You know, most of my students work here at UK or work at another university, but always leading with your values is something that I talk a lot about in the classroom, whether I'm teaching how to do research or how to think about diversity or how to think about international issues. Just coming back to, you know, what are your values and are you always enacting those in what you do? And if not, are you gonna own that or are you gonna change it? I always wanted to be a teacher because the people who I looked up to most in my life were often my teachers. They were the ones who I knew were going to guide me through, you know, all the things that I wanted to achieve. And I feel like I had that kind of reverence for the teachers that I had. And so being able to think that I have students who now think of me in that way is just, it's an incredible honor. I don't know that there's anything that's going to top that in my career, to be honest, and my career is just starting.